Hi there, everyone. Masenko here, and I am coming to you with a video that is a team preview for my UGA Season 3 team. And, unfortunately, I'm sorry I don't have a lot of time on my hands to put together like a fancy graphic for this or anything. So I just wanted to run by my thoughts of why I picked the Mons that I did and when, and what sort of some of my plans are for the season potentially. So, first things first, I picked Wheezing Galar in the B tier. I am a huge fan of Wheezing in general, even the Cantonian form. An incredibly defensive Mon with a huge defense stat. It gets Levitate, which is adding more to its defense as a poison type who would usually be weak to ground. Not to mention, it gets Neutralizing Gas, which is a pretty devastating ability if used correctly. And it allows me to, later in the draft, which I did, pick Mons like Regigigas and Archeops and feel pretty safe about picking those. So the Neutralizing Gas is huge. The Misty Surge ability for Wheezing Galarian in particular is going to be giving me even more flexibility in how I'm going to use this thing. So as a first pick, I just really wanted to pick something that added a lot of flexible utility to my team. I think Wheezing Galar is honestly one of the most flexible Mons on my team. So I'm really excited to use it. And I think, just as a general staple, part of my philosophy for drafting includes picking Mons that can be used in a wide variety of situations, trying to find synergy between them that is natural, but is not, forced or what's the word, sort of like a mode, right? Like, yes, I do have Wheezing Regigigas on this team, which is a meta mode, but I 100% did not start that way, and I do think that Wheezing outside of that mode has a lot more it can offer, as well as Regigigas, honestly. I think Regigigas doesn't necessarily need Wheezing in order to succeed as a Pokemon. So overall, just wanting to pick something incredibly flexible can kind of set the foundation for my team. Later on in the draft, not necessarily the second pick or whatever, but third and fourth picks, I completed the Fantasy Core with Bisharp and Latias. I kind of am really proud of this Fantasy Core, honestly. It's I call it the Cyberpunk Core because, well, if you look at them, they all look very futuristic. But really what they do together is they just cover each other so well for type weaknesses. First and foremost, Bisharp is 4 times weak to fighting, but Wheezing and Latias both resist that. Bisharp is weak to ground. Wheezing and Latias can both have Levitate. In fact, Latias needs Levitate. That's the only ability it gets. Latias gets Tailwind, which is something that Bisharp truly appreciates on the team, as well as Wheezing, honestly. Base 60 can definitely, even though it's on the lower side, can definitely still make use of Tailwind, matching the speeds of, say, a Inteleon or something like that. So all in all, these work well together and cover each other incredibly well. I think really this team so far definitely gives a lot of room for Bisharp to breathe and to do what it wants to do, which is be that big physical damage threat that can't get intimidated. And another thing that Wheezing provides to Bisharp is, you can't intimidate it. You can't really drop its stats without it getting that attack boost with Defiant. Misty Surge allows me to avoid Bisharp also being burned, which is an incredible thing for it, as that kind of eliminates the last way you can really drop its attack stat significantly. Now, paired with them is my Volcarona as well. I picked Volcarona second. It's an A-tier Mon. It gets, sort of fits that category of flexibility, where it can be a support Mon, gets Rage Powder, gets String Shot, gets all sorts of really interesting moves, Struggle Bug, stuff like that. But It can also be a very a powerful offensive special mon. It can max it. I have several ways I can activate weakness policy on it potentially. It's quite a fast mon and with base speed of 100. Getting to that point of that you really want to be in 100 or over for just a mon that's not going to really make use of Tailwind or Trick Room. But of course, I do have Tailwind on the team with Latias. I also have it with Archeops, who I'll talk about in a minute. Another great mon to cover the fighting type for Bisharp. It not only resists it, but with Flame Body, I might be able to get certain burns off on mons that would otherwise threaten my Bisharp. So all in all, a great mon. It does have that weakness. It would be foolish of me not to point that out of 4 times weakness to rock. So overall, that's just something that I'm gonna have to work around. But I do have mons who resist rock, and I can use as good switch-ins for Volcarona. Just having to play around that's gonna probably be a challenge, but I think definitely I have the tools here to try and make use of Volcarona very effectively. Next up is I'll talk about Toxicroak. I really like Toxicroak in general as a mon. It's once again, flexibility is king here. It gets Fake Out, gets Bullet Punch, gets Vacuum Wave, gets Sucker Punch, all sort of great priority moves. The latter of which, other than Fake Out, can enact weakness policy on various mons on my team. Not to mention, it has a decent amount of offensive pressure in itself, and at 85 speed, it's definitely making use of the Tailwind that Latias or Archeops is putting up. It gets Dry Skin, which allows it to absorb water-type moves, something that my Volcarona will definitely appreciate and my Archeops will definitely appreciate. So overall, a great flexible mon that kind of fulfills the sort of like scout role that I like to think of it as, sort of just, creating some space for my mons, enabling them, doing some good chip damage onto the opponent. So there's that. Let's talk about Roserade and Sharpedo. They're making up the Fire, Water, Grass core alongside with Volcarona. They're definitely budget picks. They're, D tier and C tier. Honestly, not the strongest Fire, Water, Grass core I've ever seen in my life. I would argue that as a whole, it's quite frail. The Sharpedo is incredibly frail. Roserade definitely doesn't have a whole lot of defensive capabilities. But I will say I really like their speed tier. As 90 speed on the Roserade, with Tailwind up again, that's an incredibly good speed tier to be in. You can throw a Scarf on it pretty reliably most of the time. Sharpedo gets speed boost, so I don't really have to worry too much if I can get that off about Sharpedo's relative speed. And the way I kind of think about using them just as sort of a default, obviously they both have a decent amount of utility that I could use with them. But I kind of think of them as counterparts for special and physical sort of revenge killers. Keep them in the back. My Pokemon just went down. I can come in with the Roserade, scarfed with, Giga Drain, Energy Ball, whatever, and just kill the thing. Or, it gets a decent amount of coverage. Same with Sharpedo, coming in, getting out that close combat, that, crunch, other coverage that it gets really nicely. I think it gets a decent amount of the bite moves, so that's nice. Overall, I'm quite happy with it. I do think I might think about ways to improve it for the mid-season, the Fire, Water, Grass core. But we'll see. Maybe these work out really nicely, and I think they will work out. It just might not be, it might not be doing the work for me. I might have to put in the extra effort to get them to work, if that makes sense. Okay, next up is let's talk about what Bronzong does for this team. I really like Bronzong on this team. As a mon, it doesn't seem to fit that well. Obviously, it's usually found as a Trick Room mon, Trick Room setter. which, I use it that way as well. I can imprison Trick Room with it, so if I don't want Trick Room up, that's a pretty reasonable way of doing it. But at the end of the day, some of these mons on my team still can work okay under Trick Room. Bisharp, Luxray, Weezing, even Regigigas with Slow Start active still can definitely make use of Trick Room. It's not off the table. So there's that. But at the end of the day, the real reason I really like Bronzong for this team, other than a Trick Room sort of denier, is the fact that it really provides that bulk that we like. It can really be a tank and wall my opponent against a lot of the types that I'm worried about. It can set screens. It gets so much stuff. I mean, once again, Levitate on a Steel type, very, very nice. It also gets Heat Proof if I'm not worried about Steel types, instead worried about Fire types. The Heat Proof can cover that as well. Both of these are covering the Bisharp nicely, so having 2 Steel types on the team, you might think that they share a lot of weaknesses, but these ones certainly don't, considering that Bronzong also is neutral to fighting because of its Psychic type, stuff like that. So overall, a great pick for the team that I plan to honestly make use of a lot more than people might expect me to. Luxray, next. Let's talk about Luxray. I love Luxray, my little Leo boy. I know Bioptic, I'll do a shout out to you with this video. The Southeast Luxrays or whatever. Was it Southeast Luxrays? I think that's what his team name was. But, he's a big Luxray fan as well. So, I really like this mon. I love electric types. I honestly wasn't my first pick. I think a couple of the electric types that I was considering ended up not either working out or kind of got sniped from me. But I'm still quite happy with Luxray. Intimidator on the team was pretty good to have. It gets Snarl, Baby Doll Eyes, Eerie Impulse. So as a sort of like support control mon, it has a lot of flexibility. Not to mention, once again, works under Trick Room, works under Tailwind. Is in that nice sweet spot of around 60 to 70. It gets Guts, which I could definitely make use of. That will boost its offensive pressure quite a bit. It gets Rivalry, which I'm, honestly, maybe I'll use it at some point, considering the different matchups. And just overall, like, decent coverage, kind of a budget Arcanine almost. But really, I do still think it's honestly bringing a lot to this team in terms of its flexibility. Once again, flexibility is king here. And then I'll kind of talk about Regigigas and Archeops in the same vein. Regigigas and Archeops both obviously, first and foremost, make use of the Weezing's neutralizing gas, with their sort of self-detrimental abilities being negated. They both have great speed tier, great offensive pressure. Regigigas in particular is quite defensive as well in its stats. Archeops not as much. But I do think that outside of those obvious pairings with the Weezing, I do think that they actually bring a lot to the table otherwise. Archeops is honestly a decent support mon if you think about it. It gets Tailwind, it gets Taunt, it gets a lot of little things. I don't remember most of them off the top of my head, but looking through their moveset, it's got a lot of stuff it could be doing. It could be run as physical or special. It's got a respectable special attack stat of 112, I believe. And it gets access to, like Heat Wave, so it gets fire coverage and whatnot. Overall, just like honestly a really solid mon, and especially for its price of being D tier. And on the other hand, Regigigas, it gets honestly, really, I mean, let's be real, Regigigas is an offensive mon. It's there to make use of the neutralizing gas and drop your speed with max strike and stuff like that. It kind of is, one trick, but like I can still think of many ways I can use it. It gets Wide Guard, which will, help against like Rock Slides and whatnot against like Volcarona. It gets a decent amount of like little tiny support moves that maybe I'll make use of here or there. So yeah, that's the team. Overall, I'm like very excited to use it. I don't think it's perfect. I did rate myself as number one in the rankings during our power rankings video, but I honestly think that's a very close edging out, and I just wanted to kind of be a little bit controversial, I guess. But I honestly don't think this team is like leagues better than any of the other teams. I think honestly this league has a lot of really really strong teams, and we'll see how I honestly match up. I can really honestly see me just going 0-8 this season, but I also do think that this team has a lot to respect about it, and could be very threatening, especially that Regigigas Wheezing. It's going to bring a lot of threat to my opponent whenever they're doing their prep. So, yeah, that's it. Please feel free to subscribe to my channel. I am going to be putting out a lot more content in this vein, hopefully, especially all my videos for the matches that I play. I'll probably do commentary on all of those as well. And otherwise, have a wonderful season, everyone. Much love to all of you. Have a great day.